So it looks like Ubisoft is going to be laying off more people in the future, and this is something that doesn't really surprise me because I've made several videos about Ubisoft within the past year or so, and it seems like every time Ubisoft is in the news and it doesn't involve like their video games, it's always something negative. And hell, even when it does involve their video games, it's negative at times because the game's either underperformed or there's been like some kind of backlash. But yeah, like the stuff I've been talking about in relation to Ubisoft from the past couple of months haven't been good. Like 3 months ago, I talked about Ubisoft workers possibly going on strike. I talked about a few months ago that potential buyout between Tencent and Ubisoft, or sorry, and yeah, Ubisoft happening in the future. I talked about Ubisoft cutting jobs in America about 5 months ago. They only cut like 45 jobs back then. And now they're cutting more than double of that in Europe. And I can, understand why because of, what I said, a potential buyout might be coming soon, along with the fact that there's been several failed games that has come out of Ubisoft in the past couple of years. I'm talking about games like Star Wars Outlaws, X Defiant, um, there was a Prince of Persia game that underperformed. One of the Division games got canceled, and a lot is riding on Assassin's Creed Shadow, which is supposed to be coming out in March of this year. And there's a lot riding on that game, and it seemed like the um, the fans of the Assassin's Creed series have been polarized about what we got in terms of presentation and gameplay with it so far. So we'll just have to wait and see how well that game does in sales once it comes out. But yeah, it just seems like Ubisoft hasn't had like any real like high profile games that has done like really really well in terms of sales. And the reason I say that is because it seems like their best games came out like during the teens for the most part. For example, look at Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. It came out back in the mid teens, I believe. I think it did over 20 million in terms of sales. And then you have like Far Cry 5, and I think that did like 20 million sales. And I think they came out like, I can't remember exactly. I think it was like sometime in the late teens, like 2018 or 2019. And then, you have Assassin's Creed Black Flag. That was like from 2013. It was probably one of the best installments in the entire series. And I think that did like 15 million in terms of copies sold. So it seems like Ubisoft was on fire in terms of putting out high profile video games that people actually give a damn about. And it seems like during the start of 20s decade, um, they haven't been so fortunate with their video games for the most part. And I feel like Assassin's Creed is just I don't know, the franchise feels like a shell of what it used to be, where it's just like living off of its name value. And some of the games that we've gotten recently are just like mid, or it's just something that people really don't care about. Because I believe we got an Assassin's Creed game that came out back in 2023, and I don't hear hardly anybody talking about that. And I'm not even sure how well that game did in terms of sales. But but yeah, I mean, it seemed like Ubisoft for the most part, it's going to get bought out because it doesn't seem like that company can really stand on its own 2 feet and put out high profile video games to compete with other video game developers. And it seems like the climate for gaming in general has been very harsh because you don't really see too many games that sell more than 3 or 4 mil overall, after it comes out. And I could say the same thing for like the games that came out in 2023. There hasn't been like probably maybe with the exception of Hogwarts Legacy, there hasn't been like any like games that did more than like 3, 4, or 5 mil in terms of sales, at least not to my knowledge. I know Hogwarts Legacy made like $1 billion after it came out, and it seems like nowadays, like most video game developers and companies are judging the success of their games based off of how much money it makes opposed to like actual like sales figures and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe it's just a new trend, that's that's happening in gaming. I really don't know, but for the most part, I don't think Ubisoft can really stand on its own 2 feet, and I feel like this buyout, if it does happen, is for the best. And and I mean, honestly, things have gotten so bad for Ubisoft to a point where they had to shut down one of their UK like studios, or they will be shutting it down in the future. I'm talking about Ubisoft Leamington, and they worked on projects like Star Wars Outlaws and Skull and Bones, and honestly, it seemed like no one really cared about those 2 games or what have you. And I honestly feel like I don't know. I honestly feel like, Ubisoft, similar to that of Warner Brothers games, they can't really put out games that really appeal to the public like they used to. And I feel like, a lot of video games nowadays in general have become mid. You only have like a handful of games that can capture mainstream attention and get people really interested in it. But I feel like it's becoming more and more difficult to do as time goes by. And I'm not exactly sure whether or not, it's just, games not being that great, or whether the cost of gaming is too expensive and people would rather not invest like hundreds of dollars on getting a Game Pass or buying extra DLC for a game that they've already bought, and the prices of that going up. So I think it's just, multiple things that's contributing to the overall like decline of gaming. And it seems like when it comes to gaming in general, the best thing about like video games nowadays are releases, the hype that the releases get prior to their release. And and that's just about it for the most part. And and even though like you have video games that get good meta scores and stuff like that, it seems like unless it's like a editor's pick or whatever, it seems like no one really cares too much about it. They'll say it's good and all, but after about a year or two it's quickly forgotten, and people just move on with their lives. And it seems like Ubisoft can't put out games that's even like to like it's even on that level of what I just mentioned, like nowadays. And I think that's something that's, kind of sad and depressing in many ways. So yeah, I mean, I think a buyout would be better than just watching Ubisoft go bankrupt or what have you. And and yeah, I mean, at this point, I have no idea whether or not we're going to get a Far Cry 7, because I know people have been waiting for that for quite some time. And and honestly, like the Far Cry series is not what it used to be. A lot of people would tell you like Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3 were among the best installments within the entire franchise, and that was many years ago. And and yeah, I mean, I feel like Far Cry is also one of those franchises that's kind of like coasting off its name value and all that. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but it seems like Ubisoft's most popular franchises have already like they've already reached their peak and we're past those peaks. And it just seems like, games like the Far Cry series or games like within the Assassin's Creed series is not getting the type of mainstream attention that they used to get. It's not selling as much as they used to. And I honestly think that's really problematic because Ubisoft needs to make more money in order to make better games and to stay in business. So, yeah, with that being said, yeah, these layoffs that's going to happen in the future, I think is part of a larger, more unfortunate trend.